So I just finished Dead Space 2, and it is fucking excellent. First things first, much better PC port than the first game. Dead Space 1 on PC had issues with the interface and some compatibility issues. It couldn't go higher than 60 FPS. It had very bad mouse problems, like in terms of, I think there was some kind of negative mouse acceleration while you were aiming or something like that. I don't remember. It's been a while since I played it on mouse and keyboard, because I ended up switching over to an Xbox 360 pad for the first game because the mouse and keyboard controls were just kind of gimped. It just wasn't great. All of that is not an issue in Dead Space 2. Very good PC port. It looks good. It runs well. It has proper mouse and keyboard controls. Playing this game with a mouse and keyboard feels great. It ran at a consistent 144 FPS the entire time I was playing, except during one late game set piece where there was just like a ton of effects going off everywhere, at which point it dropped as low as about 80 FPS, which is still high enough that if I didn't have such a good monitor, I would not be able to notice. And not in terms of like it would be an imperceptible visual difference. That it would not be a visible difference if I didn't have a high refresh rate monitor, because the 80 FPS is still well over 60 hertz. So yeah, very good PC port. They really fixed a lot of the problems that the first one had, which is great. It also looks a lot better, both in terms of on a technical level. There's more detail in the environments and higher texture resolutions available. And also the environments themselves are just a lot more diverse. There's more variety here. You move your way through a lot of different areas. You got like residential apartments. You got a mall type area. You run through a unitologist. I think unitologist is the name of the religion in this. The Marker religion. You run through one of their churches, and even it has like variety within the church, where there's like the early bits look like a contemporary church. With like that kind of like pamphlets all over the place and really upbeat, cheery imagery. And then you get a bit further in and it looks more like a legitimate temple with like stained glass and fucking weird glyphs on the walls, and everything's weirdly ornate and kind of evil looking. And then even further than that, you've got like indoctrination chambers and stuff. Very cool stuff. Yeah, and you actually you revisit the Ishimura during this game, and it looks different than it did in the first game. It's cool because it's clearly the same rooms, they just are different now. Like they've got like paper and like tape up on the walls because the government is like in the process of cleaning the ship up and like running a full cover up on the whole necromorph thing. So the ship is like in the middle of being worked on. So it's the same rooms, they just have differences because they're being cleaned up. Very cool stuff. Incidentally, that's also like the scariest part of the game. It felt like while you were on the Ishimura, it kind of like temporarily went back to the tone of the first game, but more on that later. But yeah, lots of different environments. The last area is yet another like completely different kind of place than the rest of the game. Just a lot more diversity here, which is really great to see. I like the environment design of the first Dead Space. It was very Alien. That's the movie Alien, not the adjective alien as in different, but like the movie Alien. It felt like that kind of industrial kind of thing where everything felt like it was 100% function over form. And that's cool and all, but it did get tiring when it was just that for like, what was that, a 7 or 8 hour game? So yeah, Dead Space 2 actually changes things up a lot and keeps things fresh, and that's very cool to see. It also does a lot more with the story than the first game did. Isaac is actually an actual character this time around who has dialogue, and he's actually really well characterized. I found myself liking him a lot over the course of the game. He's kind of dealing with the fallout of having been involved with the Ishimura. I mean, first of all, the game takes place like I want to say it was 3 years after the first one. I think that's right, where he's been in a psych ward because the Marker has driven him insane. Like he is hallucinating and all kinds of shit because of the Marker, and that keeps coming up over the course of this game. And the running theme over the course of this game is that he is having trouble dealing with the death of Nicole, who was his girlfriend, who was working on the Ishimura and did not survive the necromorph outbreak. And the game is basically the story of how he has to let go of that remorse and guilt for not having been able to save her and for having encouraged her to work on the Ishimura in the first place. And he has to deal with it and let her go in order to complete the end game and stop the marker. It's and I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's better to just see it yourself, honestly. But it is very well done. You're hallucinating about Nicole all throughout the game, and it has like this really good gradual sort of progression to how he views these hallucinations, where it moves from just like flatly denying, no, you're not Nicole, this isn't real, get out of my head, and slowly over the course of the game he moves on towards being more willing to interact with it and to kind of deal with it and accept that, yeah, this might be a hallucination from the marker, but it's clearly connected to something going on in my head that I need to deal with. And in fact, if I'm reading this correctly, it seems that the way that Isaac reacts to these hallucinations mirrors the 5 stages of grief. The denial, bargaining, or denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And that's very cool. It doesn't like bash you over the head with that or anything like that, but it's very cool. What else do we got? We got audio logs and text logs are another aspect to the story, which are very well done. You got them all over the place, and there are some that actually have like pretty plot crucial details in them that you can just miss. Really late in the game, there's a text log that just tells you what one of the villain guy's motivations is, and it's like, okay, maybe it would have been a good idea to like just have that in a cutscene or something, visceral, because I mean, this is a fine motivation and all that, but it's in a text log. If you happen to miss this text log, then you have literally no idea why Tideman and why EarthGov are even bothering to mess with the markers at all. Why they would be willing to do that? Because obviously the markers cause massive problems. What with turning entire space stations of people into necromorphs. So why would you even mess with that? Which, as it turns out, the reason is because in this universe, Earth was dealing with a major energy crisis, and the way to deal with this that they discovered was what's called planet cracking, where they send out ships to other planets or moons or whatever, asteroids, whatever, and just break them into pieces and mine all the resources out of them, just drain them dry, and then move on to the next one. And that is just how they deal with humanity being able to continue having energy and resources into the future, because they've completely milked the Earth dry, so now they're just destroying entire other heavenly bodies just for the sake of being able to survive a little bit longer. And the marker, as it turns out, is a pretty powerful energy source in addition to causing apocalypses. So they're basically it's kind of like Doom. In Doom 2016, how they were using Argent energy to deal with an energy crisis. Same kind of concept. They're trying to find a way to use the marker energy without all those nasty side effects of insanity and necromorphs and apocalypses. They obviously have not been successful as of yet, but there's at least now I understand their reasons for wanting to do so. But again, this was not ever like laid bare in a cutscene or anything. It was just there's a text log near the end of the game that you might miss that just says, by the way, the reason that they're dealing with the markers is because they want to solve the energy crisis. that seems like it's kind of a slightly crucial piece of information. But most of the text and audio logs are fun little optional things that are honestly really intriguing, and I would recommend hunting down and reading / listening to all of them. In particular, there's an area of the game where it's when you're near the solar array, and there's this computer system that's putting up defenses to try to stop you from getting to it. You can find the diary of the maintenance worker who lived in that area, chronicling how he's kind of been abused by this computer system, and it's really well done. He's kind of like, he's not super well characterized, but he's got enough there that you can empathize with him. He's got birds. He likes his birds, so that's cool. But yeah, it's really, really good stuff. And there's a few other cases where you get into an area and all of the text logs will just center around one specific character who lives in that area. It's cool stuff. It's worth checking out. But yeah, there's just a much more interesting and enjoyable story this time around than in the first game, in my opinion. But you know, let's get into the meat of this, the main part of the game, the combat. Because, you know, Dead Space is basically an action game. It may market itself as a horror game, but is definitely more action than horror, and this is more true than ever in Dead Space 2. You know, Dead Space 1 was like about probably half and half between trying to be horror and trying to be action, and I think that it failed on the horror half and succeeded on the action half. Dead Space 2 is mostly action, but with some like bits of horror here and there, and I think that both are a lot more successful than in the first game. Combat this time around still functions basically the same way that it did in the first one, but it's just been, you know, it's just been polished up a lot more. You got better animations going on, you got more enemy types and varieties, you got more weapons that are available to you. There's just more to it, and what is there that was in the first game is has been improved upon to just, you know, little quality of life improvements from how things used to be. So, you know, it plays really well. You got better animations here and there. You've got smoother aiming. And in this one, you can switch from the laser pointer from the first game into like a more traditional style reticle. I would actually recommend keeping the laser pointer, but that's an option there. If you want to have a reticle instead of a laser pointer, you can do that. But yeah, it's just it is still basically the same combat, just a lot more varied and a lot more enjoyable this time around. I think that they also did a lot better job at balancing the amount of ammo that you're given. Because in the first game, it seems like it's almost necessary to upgrade weapon damage at the expense of health at times, just because you don't really have much in the way of ammo being available to you. So you really gotta get the most out of every shot by just having it do as much damage as possible. And of course, you're also going to just absolutely have to make use of kinesis to, you know, to throw things at enemies and skewer them and whatnot. But in this one, it feels a lot more viable to go through it as more of a pure shooter, although you are still going to have to get crafty sometimes, because there will be times when your ammo will be harshly limited. But that's not a constant tension like it was in the first game. Now it's just more a case of like, usually you're going to be fine, but sometimes you're going to be caught in a bad situation with not much ammo and not much health, and you're going to have to get creative. You know, I guess the difference this time is that you don't get used to just not having enough ammo. This time, when you don't have enough ammo, it's a unique state. It's oh shit, I actually am running low on ammo. I need to do something now. But yeah, and the game in general is, as I mentioned, a lot more focused on action than in the first one. That action is a lot smoother, is a lot more fun, is a lot more exciting than the first one, and yet at the same time, when it does crank up the horror, it manages to be really scary, like a lot scarier than the first game in my opinion. When you're going through the Unitology Church and you're in this cathedral area dealing with necromorphs all over the place, and you feel like you're really in the belly of the beast, in like this HQ of the evil, and it's this dark foreboding atmosphere. It is a genuinely scary area. I think I got spooked pretty good while I was in there. And when you're on board the Ishimura, it also gets some really good spooks in. I mentioned before how there were hallucinations. These are used to great effect on the Ishimura, where you will briefly hallucinate set pieces from the first game. Like you walk into a hallway, and I'll be like, oh, I recognize this hallway. This was where a tentacle grabbed me by the leg and dragged me, and I had to shoot it. And then that exact thing happens, but instead of it being like an actual set piece, it disappears after a minute, and you're like, oh, Isaac was hallucinating his memory of the first game, and that sort of thing happens like 2 or 3 times while you're on board the Ishimura. They're all really brief, so none of them, like, it never manages to outstay its welcome. It's just this really cool idea that's used, you know, enough to have a good effect, but not overused. That's the thing about this game is, even though it seems like from outside of appearances it would seem more excessive than the first game is, I think that nothing was ever really overused to the point of becoming obnoxious, and I think that it has a really good sense of restraint about its ideas, where it'll have a good idea, it'll use it to proper effect, and then it'll be like, all right, if I use it anymore, then it's gonna get annoying, so let's drop that and move on to something else, and I think that it does that really well. But yeah, it can be really frightening at times. And also, when you're on board the Ishimura, that was the point where I found myself running out of ammunition a lot more than any other area of the game, which I think might have been like, I think the intent there might have been to sort of bring across the, to sort of bring up memories of the first game and like have Dead Space 2 temporarily kind of play more like Dead Space 1. And if that was their intention, then I'd have to say that that was very well done. It's a cool idea that was really well implemented, I think. But yeah, the game in general is also just exceedingly well paced. More so than the first one, more so than a lot of shooters out there. It's, you got long stretches during which you're exploring environments and you're picking up items and you're fighting occasional enemies, and you gotta deal with these guys, but they're not like big high intensity fights. It's just some regular enemies here and there, and it builds the tension and it builds the tension, and then you get this big payoff with either either a large scale battle or a big cool action set piece or anything like that, and you get this explosive payoff to it, and then it quiets down and it gives you some time to relax, and it gives you a store and a save point and maybe a bench, and it's like, all right, okay, hold on, calm down now, okay, we're good, you survived that, you can calm down. Okay, now let's start building that tension again, and it does this, pretty much constantly over the course of the game, and obviously this is pretty basic stuff. Pacing is not exactly the most arcane of sciences when it comes to an artistic experience, but it is important, and a lot of games get it very wrong in my opinion. So I feel the need to commend it here where it is done very well. The set pieces in themselves are also really strong in my opinion. I think that they're a lot of fun. There's one early in the game where you're on a tram and it derails and ends up kind of tilted, so you like slide down it and have to like shoot some necromorphs along the way down, and then end up hanging upside down and have to fight off more that are coming for you while you're hanging upside down, which was, for those of you who watched or listened to my Tomb Raider 2013 video, that was, I mentioned how that was done several times in that game. In this game it's done once, and it's done better, because it feels more disorienting here, since you've kind of got to deal with like the effect that it has on your laser pointer aiming and whatnot, and also the enemies that you're dealing with are more threatening than just the random dudes that you fight in Tomb Raider. So yeah, it's used to much greater effect in this game in my opinion. It's also like properly built up to as part of a set piece, instead of it just being, oh, and then you stepped into a trap and now you're hanging upside down. But yeah, so this game does it better, and it only does it once instead of 3 times. So, that's good, obviously. But yeah, you've got these sort of big set pieces kind of periodically throughout the game, and I found all of them to be really enjoyable and exciting and fun. Obviously, mileage will vary on that. Some people don't really enjoy big, like, scripted set piece moments. I think that they can be a lot of fun if done well. Obviously, I enjoyed them a lot in Sonic Forces, and I enjoy them a lot in Dead Space 2. So yeah, I would say that from a pacing standpoint, it's really well done. The combat is great. The you got a lot of enemy variety. You've got your basic necromorphs like in the first game. Obviously, you still got those bat dudes that will turn random corpses into necromorphs, so you want to take them out quickly to minimize the amount of necromorphs they can create. And then you've obviously got your stronger necromorphs that take more shots to fill and all that kind of thing. But you also got some new guys. You got this dude whose chest is kind of just like torn open, and he'll vomit like acid and bile at you, which will have the effect of both dealing damage and slowing your movements for a while. So that's obviously not great. You got little guys who will just kind of, like, a bunch of them will come in and run at you, and they only take 1 hit each to kill, but there's, they're a horde, they mob you. You got necromorph infants, which almost feel in bad taste. You first encounter these things at a fucking bloodstained preschool, which is maybe a little bit much, but they're a pretty neat enemy type. They make this crying baby sound that is like distorted in such a way as to sound utterly horrifying, and they slowly move towards you with their fucking glowing bloated stomachs and try to explode on you. Very, very unsettling. There's another type of enemy that's kind of explosive where it's just got like long legs, and one of its legs will be like a big explosive thing that you can shoot. I want to say that those guys might have appeared in the first game, but I'm not certain on that. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, and then probably my favorite new addition to the enemy roster is the Stalkers, I believe they're called, which are these... They're basically necromorph velociraptors. They hunt in packs of 4 or 5, and they'll all like spread out and hide in the environment, and then one of them will peek out from behind a corner to distract you, while another one flanks around to your side or behind you and gets you while you're looking at them. Very unsettling to be around, very difficult to deal with on your first encounter. They once you kind of learn how they work, you can kind of start to deal with it, but they are still one of the most challenging enemy types in the game, particularly once you get late in the game and you start running into the powered up versions of them that take more shots to kill. But yeah, really creepy dudes, and they're not like loud and screamy like most of the necromorphs in this game are. When they go and like peek out around the corner, they just silently poke their head out and look at you, and they kind of got that like inquisitive head cocking kind of feel to them, you know. Very unsettling. Also, when you step into a room where you're gonna encounter these guys, you can hear them before you can see them. You can just like hear these like little quiet scuffling noises all around you, like they're trying to be quiet, but they can't quite be silent because they got fucking exposed bone for their feet. But yeah, really unsettling enemy type, very challenging to deal with. Later in the game, they start appearing in conjunction with the acid spitter guys, which makes for some very difficult encounters. Really, I would say that the stalker encounters are probably the high points of this game. They're my favorite enemy type by a long shot. So yeah, really great action, really good just combat in general, very cool and interesting enemy types that are all, you know, mixed together and thrown in different quantities at you to keep things fresh, keep you guessing, keep you having to deal with different things. Very strong action in general in this game that I would just highly praise, as I have been doing. But yeah, and the end game really cranks all that action up. Like throughout most of the game, you know, it kind of hits a balance between action and fear factor. The end game just like completely drops any pretense of being scary and is like, all right, here's a fucking gauntlet to just fight your way through it. Just deal with it. Just fight all the enemies, all the fucking enemies. Just kill every necromorph. And it, you know, it's very challenging. You got a lot of enemies to deal with. You don't have, I mean, by this point you should be able to carry a good chunk of resources, but they are still limited, and there's still only so much you can carry at a time, and you probably will, unless you're really good at managing things, you probably will find yourself running low on several things by the time you reach the end game, or the end of the game. There's also some really cool scripted bits in this end game area that I'm not gonna spoil here, but they're a lot of fun. They're cool to watch. But yeah, it really ramps things up in a way that feels very satisfying at the end, and it feels very earned because the rest of the game, you know, was paced so masterfully that by the end, when it's just like, all right, let's just fucking throw everything at you and just you got to deal with it, that, you know, it feels like yeah, this is what we've been building up to. This is what I'm here for. This is a natural progression of how the game has been occurring up to this point. Again, I can't stress enough that this game really does have excellent pacing. Yeah, my only real complaint about this game that I could kind of level at it is the fact that the final boss is pretty fucking lame. It's not great. You just like go into Isaac's head and you fight Nicole, his girlfriend, who is like a representation of the marker or whatever. She just slowly walks towards you and you gotta shoot her a bunch until she disappears, and the marker in the background like opens up to reveal a big glowing heart that you gotta shoot a bunch. And then it'll close and she'll reappear, and a bunch of those mob enemies that just run at you and only take one hit will like all spawn in. So you gotta deal with them and shoot her. And it's not great. The enemies are pretty weak, so you don't really have to worry about them, and you should probably have a good chunk of healing items on you by this point anyway. The only I died a couple times to this fight, and the only times I ever died were because of the fact that if Nicole gets close enough to you, then she'll just grab you and instantly kill you, and you got too close to her. Bad, don't do that. You're dead now. Which is not great. Feels pretty anticlimactic. Yeah, not a great final boss fight at all. In fact, probably one of the weaker ones that I've played. But it's not that long, you know, it's a pretty short one, and once you finish it, the game does have one last big set piece for you, which I think gives a pretty satisfying conclusion to the story. Brings back a very likable character who spends a lot of the time. You don't spend a lot of time with her in the game, but you spend a lot of time talking to her through like your radio and whatnot. And you know, by this point, I really liked this character, and she seemed to have been kind of out of the story earlier on due to another plot development, but she comes back and she helps you out, and you get another big set piece, and it feels really satisfying. So the final boss is pretty lame, but it does pull it back and you know, end up giving a really satisfying conclusion by the end of it. And you know, if my only real complaint about the game is it has a mediocre final boss, then that's still pretty good as far as I'm concerned. It's still a really excellent horror-flavored action game overall. I would highly recommend this game to fans of things like Resident Evil 4 and similar games. You know, if you like shoulder shooters, if you like cool monster designs, if you like bombastic action set pieces, then definitely give this a look. And I'm going to be giving it, on my Rosen meter here, a 9 out of 10.
Fantastic!
So yeah, definitely check this game out. It's available for pretty cheap on Steam. How much was it exactly? Let me see if I can't find that. If I can get Steam to respond here. Why is this interface being so sluggish right now? You know, obviously it's always just when you need the interface to be responsive that it decides not to be, you know? But yeah, let's take a look at the store page here. If it'll load. Okay, that store page took long enough to load that I'm definitely going to cut that silence out. But yeah, okay, it's only $20 on Steam, and I would very much recommend picking it up for that price, because it is definitely worth that much. It is worth more than that, in fact. Yeah, definitely check this game out. Very, very excellent game. I just noticed the only description, like the little blurb on the Steam page where it usually describes the game, you know, normally it would like actually have like a plot synopsis or list off some features there or whatever, but for Dead Space 2 it just says, "The Nightmare Returns," in all caps with a period. Very good. But yeah, definitely pick up Dead Space 2 if it seems like your thing.